Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and we're going to take a little break from the Solabusca world for now. The first 7 videos, I have one more that I haven't released yet, so I have a total of 7, but they're more me taking baby step looks at the Solabusca. I don't really have anything profound to say or share at this stage. It would require me to do some deep dives before I really have anything else to contribute besides my first impressions. But at any rate, I really appreciate for those of you who've been along the ride with me. And as I mentioned in other videos, I have a playlist for Solabusca. So as I drop Solabusca videos, that's where they'll be. But this video is more in line with some of the things that most of you probably watch me for, and that is new decks. And I don't just showcase expensive decks. You know that I will showcase inexpensive decks too. I particularly like to turn my viewers on to affordable decks because I really would love for tarot to reach as many people as possible, because it's a wonderful tool for tapping into your own reality or your own truth. And yes, it's a wonderful way to help other people, but it's not necessarily just for people who want to make a living interpreting the cards. It could be for everybody. So I was perusing and I found a $10 tarot deck. Now, based on looking at these pictures on the deck, and I haven't opened it yet, it's still sealed. But based on looking at the images, I'm going with the supposition that this is based on the Birdell. It doesn't say, right on the package, it does say on the package, this beautiful box contains blah, 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 illustrations inspired by Claude Birdell, 1751. All right, so I was just looking at the front. So it is in fact a Birdell copy, or inspired by Birdell. So $10, I got it over at Amazon. Let's open this pack and let's take a look at it. I love finding inexpensive decks because especially for my students or people who want to take my class, I don't want them to feel as though they have to spend a whole lot of money to get a deck, and $10 isn't going to hurt anybody, I don't think. Okie doke. So the company, so they offer a guidebook if you scan. Now, I'm, not the type of person to scan codes. So I'm not telling you that you have to do that, but it is available. If you buy the deck, you can get a guidebook for it. I guess the company is named Omnito. Then a typical tuck box. In case you missed it on the box, they are eager for you to scan the code. Dear friend, to find the guidebook, please visit our Instagram page at Omnito_1. If there is anything wrong with your deck, please notify us immediately via direct message. We strive to resolve any problems or concerns as quickly as possible. Well, that's a nice commitment. Oh, look at this back. Oh, wow, that's beautiful. What a pretty back. So the card stock is laminated. It's a gloss. You have a blank card here. Okay, we don't have any borders. And the corners, unlike old school cards, are rounded, which a lot of people appreciate. Now, I prefer small rounded corners, like the minimum rounded corner. This is a bigger rounded corner than I personally like, but that wouldn't have stopped me from getting the deck. So in large letters, we have the name. So where there seems to be a difference probably, and I'll check myself. There seems to be like shading, you know, a little bit of shading on the let me go look on the Burdell that I have. I have a few Burdells, but I'm grabbing the Burdell by Lo Scarabeo. I have one by Ezra Node, but I'm not. So yeah, you see this is more linear, and this is, yeah, there's an attempt here at shading to make it like not just with hash marks, but with actual change of color to give the, you know, modulation, which is interesting. Let's see, which one are we on here? And you see, so they put it's not just the hash marks that they have, but they also put in a different color to modulate. That's interesting. So if you like the Claude Burdell, which is a Swiss deck from the 1700s, I'm not sure exactly what year. Let me see, 1750, I'm going to guess. Let me see what the Lo Scarabeo says. What does this box tell us? 1751. So there's no borders. So they just sort of sit in a free space. The cardstock, let's see how it feels. Feels all right. Boy, it really does have a different look, you know, than say when there's a border. The borders, I guess, make it feel contained, you know, obviously. That's why you frame something, to make it have a more finished look, right? So these are kind of like free range cards, you know. I have to laugh because we call one of my grandchildren, she's like a little free range chicken. But these kind of feel the same, they're not contained. And the colors are, you know, saturated colors. So I think it's a good little deck. If you're just learning tarot, or you're, you know, recently tuned into my channel to learn a little bit more about how to read these cards, this is not a bad deck. You can clearly see who it is. We have the Roman numeral. And it's true to a Burdell, so it's not like it's not taking much liberty. It's just giving it maybe some shadow so that it looks more three-dimensional than the cards would typically suggest, but and we'll do a demonstration reading using this, and I'll also shuffle the cards so you can see, yeah, that's totally a Swiss baton. I do like Swiss decks. I apologize for the overhead light. It's a very dark day, overcast, rain, and this room is northern exposure, so I don't get bright. I love the Burdell, and I love the Swiss decks in general for this sequence of cards. Don't you just love? I just love the suit of cups. I love the party feel of the two of cups. Yeah, some people say those are cannons. Some people say those are trumpets. I don't know what they are, but they just look like a good time, you know. Just beautiful. This is beautiful. Here's my boyfriend. Yeah, there you go. This is another reason why I love the Swiss decks. It's just the 4 of coins and the two of cups. It just feels so happy. They just feel so good. So if you're familiar with the Burdell and you like it, or you like Swiss decks, you'll love this deck. Okay, now let's take a look at the practical side of things. Is this a good shuffling deck? It's smaller than a typical tarot deck. Here are the backs. Against the Burdell by Lo Scarabeo. And let's shuffle. So it's a little smaller. It's a little stiff, but it is brand new. It is a laminated deck. Well, hopefully it'll shuffle better as I use it. Oh, it's already a little bit better after the second shuffle. Okay, it's a little stiff, but it's $10, so I'm not going to be so critical of it. And I do think it's something that will improve with use. Let me go off camera, continue to shuffle enough times, and then we'll do a few readings. And I didn't mention it, but for those of you who like touch, right, the box has a very satisfying kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but I like the way it feels. Okay, now I discovered that when I was trying to riffle shuffle the deck, I saw a card was in the wrong direction. I had a mess of a time, so it's, for whatever reasons, it's not easy to riffle shuffle this deck, which is fine because a lot of people don't prefer to riffle shuffle. I shuffle both ways. I riffle shuffle to clean it, to clear it. I do 11 riffle shuffles if possible, and then I do a series of overhand shuffles. And I've already been to my meditative place, and I've already asked the universe to help me out because I have a real question. I have lost one of my wedding bands. Now, this set is my original set when we got married. And it consisted of one little band of, little tiny diamonds. And then my husband's birthstone with little diamonds. And then there was a second band that went on top. So my engagement ring was sandwiched between these two bands. I can't find the top band. I can't find it anywhere, and it's making me crazy because I want to find them. I wear different rings at different times. My husband's bought me, several rings, and so sometimes I just like to mix things up. I'm not one to just stick with, I'm glad I don't have an expensive diamond ring or anything because I can wear different rings. I can switch out my rings. And because I switch out my rings, when I put this set aside, I wasn't careful, I guess, and the second band wasn't with these two rings, and I'm heartbroken because it was, I got married with the ring. So I would like to find it. I have torn the house upside down, backwards, everything. I can't find it. I have a sick feeling in my gut that it's probably been accidentally vacuumed up by the Roomba or the regular vacuum cleaner, or, knocked aside and thrown out, or I have the worst case scenario in my head. And, if that's what's happened, I mean, there's not much I could do about that. But in the off chance that this ring is in this house and not in the places that I've looked at a million times, I would just like clues for where I might find my ring. Now, for those of you who have been with me for a long enough time, you know that it was only a matter of time before I had to do a reading on a lost object, because I seem to use the cards for finding lost objects frequently. I'm always losing something. And for this purpose, I usually only lay 3 cards, maybe a 4th for a quintessential card, because I'm not looking for multiple aspects of a situation like I would with my signature spread. I'm just looking for a direct answer. Where is my missing ring? Where can I find it? Please give me clues on where it may be found. Ten of batons. 5 of batons. So notice that the batons are descending. And then a 10 of coins. Now, when I see 10, my heart kind of sinks a little bit, because it kind of suggests put a fork in it, it's over. You may not find it. Let's see what the combination of 10 and 10 is. 20, 25 minus 22 would be 3. So let's find the Empress. Of course, it's not a quick find. Here we go. So my heart sinks a little bit when I see the 2 10s, because as I mentioned, it could suggest that it's over, game over, right? But there is a 5 between them. So the 5 of batons, for me, 5 is an unsettled number. It's the number after the stability of 4, and it's before, the perfect number of 6. So it's a little bit of an unstable number. So it could suggest that it's in a spot that's kind of a sloppy spot. Like maybe I took it off and put it on the edge of a table when I was sleeping, and it fell on the floor, something like that. So it seems like it was a sloppy number. Now the 10 of coins is the most hopeful card for me, because it's the card that suggests domesticity, that it's in the home, so that there's a chance that it's still in the home. And then of course the empress, would be myself. So the queen, or the empress, is looking for her object in the house. Now, I mean, that's a pretty superficial read about the queen, the empress being myself. Notice that she's not looking towards the 10 of coins in the house. She's looking elsewhere. She's looking outside. She's looking outside of the domestic space. So my first impression upon seeing these cards, when I first laid the 10 of batons, I thought, Okay, that's like a big fence, a big block out. I'm not going to find it. Then when I saw the 5 of the same suit, I thought, okay, well, it's diminished in size. It's a challenge, but it's not maybe as hopeless as forget about it, put a fork in it. Then I see the other 10, and then I think, well, maybe it is all, maybe it is. And if it was any other 10 but the coins, I might have thought that completely, but because it's a 10 of coins, it gives me hope that it's in the house. Then I have the Empress. And of course, on the surface or in the most superficial way, it represents myself. But I think there's more to the Empress, than just that it's me, that I've lost something. Now, I'm struck by the fact that she's looking this way. So one of the first things I did was I paused the camera, and I literally got up to look to see what was over in this direction, because I'm in my tarot parlor quite a bit. It's possible I took the ring off and put it over there, but it's not over there. It could suggest that it's on the Empress's side of the bedroom, so that it could be in my bedroom, but not on the side where my husband would sleep, on my side. It could suggest, it could suggest that it's in a plate, like something like this. I'm known sometimes to put my rings, in a container. I'm not typically one that would put my rings on a table because they get lost, right? So I would typically put it in something like that. So it could suggest that I might have put the ring in a plate, but there's only one that looks like that. These aren't like that. It's just, this then just tells me it's in the house somewhere. So I'm not any further ahead. I'm drawing a blank. Sometimes that happens. I'm going to ask the universe for clarification. What is the Empress looking at? I think these cards are telling me that it's in a difficult spot, but it's in the house, and she needs to look in this direction. So I'm going to do what I rarely do and ask for clarification because I'm not quite getting it. What is the Empress looking at? So she's looking at another aspect, perhaps, of herself. Well, that wasn't very helpful. It could be suggesting that it's closer than I think. It could be in an intimate location, that's like very near where I typically am, in my bedroom. So I'm going to have to, I had thought it was probably in my vanity, because that's usually where if I take jewelry off, I just usually lay it on top of my vanity, but it's not there. And I've searched. I have searched and searched and searched. But this does suggest that it's in an intimate spot, close to me. Okay, so I paused the camera because I was really, I lost my glasses in the process. I was really struck by these two cards looking at each other and being representative of myself and believing that it was very close to myself. So in an intimate space, right, at home. And then I was wondering if these, aside from the fact that it might be in a tricky spot or a difficult spot to find, maybe it's in a woven, something that's woven. So the most intimate spots in my house that are closest to me, would be my tarot parlor and, of course, the bedroom. And I have 1,000,001 things that are woven, so it could represent like woven, material, like a bag, or it could also represent like a basket. And I have a few little baskets. So And it could represent some type of dish. And maybe it's in a dish or a vase or something like that. And I have looked in all those places and I can't find it. So I'm hopeful that it's, that I can find it in an intimate spot within the home, perhaps in something that's woven. It could be chaos, like a chaotic location, but at the moment, it escapes me. Now, of all the times that I've done readings looking for items with my cards, I believe I found the missing item all but one time. And I still never found one item. So it's not a foolproof method, but more times than not, I do find what I'm looking for. So I'm going to keep that information on the back burner of my mind, and let's do another reading with these cards. Now these are a nice petite size, so it's a good size deck for my signature spread. For those who've been with me for a while, my signature spread that I developed is 3 rows of 3, and then the additional 4 quintessential cards. And it's a great spread for when you have a question, like one question with multiple features. And you don't have to designate, this line tells me what this is and this and this. It usually just speaks to me, and then I just know what it's talking about. So let me think of a good question. Perhaps I'll tear something from the headlines because it's something that you're all probably aware of. And I don't have to, dig into my personal life to come up with a personal question or anything like that. So let me go off camera and think for a few minutes of a good topical question that many of you may be familiar with. Okay, now I've thought of a really good question, but it's going to require me to explain a few things ahead of time. I'm thinking of the O.J. Simpson case, which, as many of you may realize, it was 30 years this past June that someone murdered Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman at her home, or in front of her home, on the steps of her home, something like that, in the walkway of her home on Bundy Lane. Now, if you're a person of a certain age and you were an adult at that time, you may have been like myself, and you may have been tuned in. I never took my eyes off the television. It was a televised, trial. It happened in the summer when I had off because I was a teacher, and then it went into the school year. But I came home every day and I watched. Right. At any rate, because it was the 30th anniversary, there have been a number of programs and shows on the YouTube that had people being interviewed about the event. And Kato Kaelin has been one of the people interviewed. And I watched this, if you want to go see, I think his name is Tom Zenner. I should have looked before I started the video, but I didn't know I was going to start talking about him. But I think that the channel is Tom Zenner, I think. And he's been doing a series of, let me flip the camera. He's done a series of interviews with individuals who are alive and participating in the O.J. Simpson trial. He's interviewed Kato extensively, Kato Kaelin, and Kato now is a partner with him on his channel. He's also interviewed Tom Lang and another woman named, I can't think of her name, but a woman who had been almost run off the road by O.J. as he was leaving Bundy Lane. And the one interview that I'm referencing right now is an interview he did with the chauffeur, Alan Park. Now, during that interview with Kato and Alan Park, right before they signed off, Alan asked Kato, because they were together with O.J., putting O.J.'s luggage in the car. If you recall, he was going, right after the murders, he was going to Chicago, I think. And he had called for a chauffeur to pick him up. And Cato had just experienced like a pounding at his side, at the side of his at the side of his bungalow, and he thought it was an earthquake, and so he was like really like shook up about it, and he kept asking both of them, OJ and the chauffeur, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" Now, as it turns out, on the side of the bungalow, right where Cato thought he heard an earthquake, right where he had a picture hung on the wall that tilted, so it was like we knew the location. As it turns out, that's where the bloody glove, or one of the bloody gloves, was found, right back there, which may or may not have been planted by Mark Furman. We may never know the truth behind that, but in any case, it's probably where OJ had jumped or landed when he was going through that passageway between the bungalow and a fence or whatever, and he may have accidentally hit the side of the house. So whether he actually dropped the glove there or not, it's evident that OJ came in contact with the side of the bungalow where Cato felt the thump. So he was telling them that, Cato was telling both OJ and the chauffeur, like, yeah, the wall, like, the picture tilted and everything, it hadn't been an earthquake. I felt the thump. So OJ, knowing perhaps that it was him, and maybe realizing that he was missing a glove, this is just conjecture on my part, said to Cato, and this is what the chauffeur recalled, he said to Cato, "You go that way around the bungalow, and I'll go this way around the bungalow, and we'll meet, and we'll go and see what we can find." So Cato said, "Yeah, that's a good idea." And then the chauffeur was left by the car, and although OJ said, "You go that way, I'll go this way," when Cato went this way, OJ followed him. So he let a little bit of time go by, and then he followed Cato to go in the same direction as Cato. And, they didn't know anything about murders. That was not on anybody's radar at that time. But that was something that inside of the chauffeur felt off. And he asked Cato, were you aware of the fact that when he said to go in opposite directions that he was following you? And he said, the chauffeur said, "My instincts told me to follow OJ because he had a bad feeling about OJ following him." And so when OJ saw that the chauffeur was also following him, OJ said, "Oh, never mind, we're running late. Let's get on that airplane. Let's get to the airport." So nobody knows what OJ's intent was for saying, "Let's do this," but then he actually did this. And it kind of stuck with me too after he said that. And so I'm kind of curious, and I asked the cards, I've been in my meditative place already, to clarify what it was. What was OJ's intent by saying one thing but doing another? Like, what was his intent for going the same direction as Cato? So let me flip the camera and I'll lay the cards. And I'll just do a couple more shuffles so that you know it's a genuine read. Eight coins, 5 batons, Ace of Swords, the Valet of Batons, the Star, Death, the Lover card, 5 of Swords, and the Hermit. I must say, this deck, being petite and very jewel-toned, it does make a lovely pattern of color, doesn't it? Okay, I'm going to go off camera because my math has not been great, so I'm going to very carefully add up the numbers to get my quintessential cards. Okay, so this is a very interesting spread. You'll notice that we have 2 judgment cards at play, and because I have a second Burdell deck, I just put the second judgment card there. Sometimes if I don't know where to look, I'll look direct front and center, and the front and center card is the hope card. Excuse me, this is the star card here. So I think in my mind, I see it as OJ seeing an opportunity, seizing an opportunity. Okay, he's got an opportunity to do something, perhaps to utilize Cato in some way. Cato is a subservient to him. Cato was living in his bungalow. He wasn't his, servant or anything like that. He wasn't his maid or anything like that. He was just, a guy that OJ allowed to live in his bungalow. He very graciously at that time allowed Cato to live in his bungalow because Cato had been a friend of Nicole's and had been paying rent and living in Nicole's bungalow. She had like a guest house behind her house where she had been living. And OJ didn't care for that arrangement. And when Nicole moved from that home and bought another home that did not have a bungalow, she offered Cato to, just take an extra room in that apartment or that house with her. Cato did not want to do that, and OJ obviously was a jealous male, and he didn't want anybody living with his ex-wife. So he offered Cato to stay at one of his bungalows. He had 3 bungalows, and one of OJ's daughters lived in one of the bungalows, and then Cato lived in the other. So I see this as Cato being like, owing OJ something in OJ's mind, right? So I see this immediately. I'm struck with, OJ seeing an opportunity to perhaps use Cato for something. Now, if it's true that he is responsible for the deaths of Nicole and Ron Goldman, which all evidence really indicates that he was responsible for their deaths. He wasn't found guilty, but that doesn't mean he wasn't. So I'm seeing this row as OJ seeing an opportunity to maybe have an alibi for the deaths. We have the justice card. There's no doubt going to be a legal issue. He's going to need somebody in his corner. So that's how I read this line. So I think these cards make me think not so much that he was going to hurt. The chauffeur got a chilling feeling, and he just didn't feel right. He felt something was not right about what OJ did, and that's why he followed OJ. He had no knowledge of a murder or anything, the chauffeur, but he just had an uneasy feeling, and that's his instincts told him to follow them. So I don't know. I don't know if this death card references that he would have hurt Cato, because why would he? Because the chauffeur was there, and the chauffeur would be a witness unless he planned on taking them both out. But come on, how many dead bodies can you leave a trail before it gets to your door? It was right at his house. So I don't think that would be the case. I think OJ saw it as an opportunity to try to manipulate Cato into providing some kind of alibi. Because we see here we have a card of justice and a card of judgment. So these are like legal things, like making something, like a legal issue clear or whatever. So I'm thinking he was probably going to manipulate Cato for future, just to plant a seed, in case he needs something for it in a trial. Now I'm going to pause for a second and flip the camera. And, I just read that one row, and that one row sort of answered the question, but I'm going to look at the other rows just to see. But that kind of, right there, kind of tells me what's up. But it also made me think of another portion of that same interview where Cato was discussing about immediately after once the bodies were found and OJ came back from Chicago, because he hopped on that plane, went to Chicago, and then was called back. And there was an incident like a day or two after it happened. And Cato was invited by OJ into the house. He had a gathering of his family. And in that space with the people, OJ said out loud, "Thank God Cato was with me and that we had dinner together in my kitchen, because had we not, I might be a suspect," because he was suggesting that Cato being in his house at a certain time cleared him. Well, that clearly, Cato immediately knew that that was a lie. He knew he did not have dinner with OJ in the kitchen at all during any period of time. They never had dinner together in the kitchen. So Cato, at that point, understood that OJ was directing him in a way to understand that the bottom line is that we had dinner together in the kitchen. So Cato didn't feel good about that. He understood he was being set up for an alibi. He said at that point he knew that OJ was guilty, because an innocent man would not have done that. So he left. So with that information in my head and seeing these cards, it makes me think that that's probably along the lines of what OJ had in mind, that he was going to try to establish with Cato some type of alibi, hey buddy, this is what we were doing, right? Right? I think he was trying to do that. Okay, so let me flip back the camera and we'll look at the other two rows. Now, it's impossible not to think about the murder that occurred, because that's what happened, right? So we have a card of, a domestic home, a domestic space. 8 is a stable number. Lack of chaos. And 5 suggests that chaos entered the home, or chaos was a part of that home. She left him because he was an abusive husband. And so her home was, I guess, her sanctuary. But she wasn't really free. And when he made an appearance, it was usually chaos. It was threats. It was he's pushing her door down. He's getting in. He's beating her up, that kind of thing. And then, of course, this card suggests aggression in the context of this question. It could mean something else. If, we're looking at it in the context of what we know happened. We know this woman was killed, and her friend, we know. And I'm seeing this card as bloodshed. And if you notice, 8 and 5 is 13. So that does sort of echo the suggestion of death by sword and blood. Now, if we didn't know what happened, if we didn't know a murder happened or anything, if it was a different type of question, the cards could have been read in a different way. I'm reading the cards in the context of a situation that we already know. Okay, here we have the lovers. OJ was not her lover, but he was her ex-husband. He might have thought her friend who was there was a boyfriend. He might have just been triggered by thinking that this was a love interest that was showing up. Again, aggression. We have another 5. Both of these 5s are suits that could suggest weapons. And if they suggest weapons, they could suggest aggression. So we have mistaken identity, perhaps thinking that Ron Goldman is a boyfriend, or it could just be that OJ was an ex-husband. Either one of these meanings could satisfy this, or both can. OJ misunderstood what he was looking at and thought that this was a liaison between the two. Or it could just be, in a jealous rage, he misunderstood the situation and brought chaos. But here we have the hermit, which is very interesting, in this row as it appears. Now, I usually see the hermit as a wise individual, a wise person. But in the context of this question, he's definitely somebody who's wandering into this space. And he sees the five, the K, he sees this, and then he sees this. So was he blinded by anger and saw this rather than just seeing innocence? Now, it's also possible that he had already killed Nicole when Ron Goldman showed up. And in which case, he probably would have had to have killed the witness. He would have had to have done that. So he may not have been thinking that they were a romantic pair. But I think probably the reason he killed either of them was because I think he did see them together. And he was clouded. His vision was clouded. His judgment was not clear. And this card does suggest that the truth comes out, which it didn't. The truth did not come out. I mean, he was found innocent at trial, found not guilty. But it's like everybody, including the jury, knows that he was responsible for the deaths of those two people. But there were other factors at play for why he was not condemned, that they felt was justified. But I think, to answer the question, what was OJ's intention for following Cato behind the bungalow? It was answered by this row. And the other cards just added additional information. So I hope this has been insightful and interesting for you. Let me mention one more thing. I've kind of abandoned my other social channels. Like I used to do Instagram. I had 2 Instagram accounts, and I had a Facebook page dedicated to my tarot. But I sort of kind of abandoned all of it in favor of just using my YouTube. So if you're trying to hook up with me on Instagram, please don't be offended if I don't. I don't even understand how to do anything on Instagram anymore. Now they have threads, and I have no idea what that's all about. Sometimes it tells me somebody wants to follow my thread or something, and I say, okay, I'll follow them, or I don't know how to even do it. So please don't feel like you're being cheated or that I'm blocking you or anything like that. I just don't know how to utilize it anymore. I've been away from it for so long, I no longer know how to do it. If you're following me on YouTube, that's all you really need to follow me on, because anything I would do elsewhere would just direct you to this channel anyway. As always, if you don't mind, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, share me if you'd like, and perhaps buy me a cup of coffee or something like that. I'd appreciate it. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, and do no harm.